The little girls wished that changed the town. The car slowed at a red light, holiday music humming softly through the speakers. 8-year-old Lily gazed out the frosted window, her breath catching in her throat. There he was again, a man wrapped in a threadbare blanket, huddled beneath a street lamp. No signs, no shouts, just quiet, cold stillness. People passed by like ghosts, never looking twice. Then Lily turned to her mother and asked a question that would rattle the soul of an entire town. Why doesn't anyone help him? What no one knew in that moment. Not her mother, not the man on the street, not the city she called home, was that this little girl's question wasn't just innocent curiosity. It was the spark of a movement that would melt the coldest hearts and change everything. It was an ordinary December afternoon in the small town of Willow Creek. The kind of day where Christmas lights blinked from every porch and the smell of cinnamon drifted from bakeries. But for 8-year-old Lily Carter, something didn't feel right. As her mother's car idled at a red light downtown, Lily looked out the window and saw a man sitting on the sidewalk, his knees pulled to his chest, a cardboard sign resting beside him. Cold. Hungry. Please help. He wasn't asking loudly. He wasn't begging. He was just there, still invisible to most. Lily stared at him quietly, the joy of her peppermint hot chocolate melting away. "Mom," she asked, tugging her coat tighter, "why doesn't that man have a house?" Her mother glanced over, startled. "He's homeless, sweetie. Isn't anyone helping him?" The question lingered in the car, heavy and uncomfortable. Lily didn't say another word, but her silence said enough. That night, as Christmas carols played softly in the background and snow dusted the windowsill, Lily sat at the kitchen table. Her crayons lay beside her untouched coloring book. Instead, she had a notepad and an idea. "I want to make bags," Lily said, her voice soft yet filled with an unexpected resolve as she sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered around her like a rainbow of possibility. Her small hands fidgeted with the edge of a piece of paper, her brow furrowed in thought. Her mother, still wiping flour from her hands as she prepared dinner, paused for a moment, the rolling pin in her grasp suspended in midair. She turned to look at her daughter, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "What kind of bags, sweetheart?" Lily's eyes sparkled with a quiet determination, a light that seemed to shine brighter than any Christmas tree she'd seen that season. She bit her lip, carefully choosing her words, as though the weight of this idea was too precious to rush. "Happy bags," she said slowly, as if testing the words on her tongue, letting them dance in the air before them. "Or maybe, love bags." Her mother raised an eyebrow, her hands resting on the counter, unsure if she was still in the middle of making dinner or if she'd just entered a dream. "Love bags?" she asked gently, the confusion clear in her voice. Lily nodded, a small smile curling at the corners of her lips. She could almost see it, the vision forming in her mind as she spoke. Bags that have things in them, food, socks, maybe a toothbrush or something warm. And maybe a letter, a note that says, "You matter." Her mother's heart skipped a beat as she stood there, the weight of her daughter's words settling deep within her. It wasn't just the simplicity of the idea or the innocence in Lily's voice. It was the depth of it, the quiet kindness that Lily wanted to offer, the understanding that even in the coldest of times, there was something so deeply human in knowing that someone cared enough to see you. Lily's hands fluttered to her chest, as if trying to hold her heart in place, her voice growing softer now. "I think if they knew they mattered, even just for a minute, it might help them feel better." There was a wisdom in her words, something old and timeless, as if she had somehow understood that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer is not what's inside the bag, but what's inside the heart, the knowledge that we're seen, that we are not forgotten. Her mother blinked, her eyes filled with something between disbelief and awe. She was witnessing something she hadn't expected to see from her young daughter, a desire to give, to love, to make a difference. But it wasn't just a desire, it was a calling. "You want to make these love bags for people who don't have homes?" her mother asked, her voice trembling slightly, as if realizing that what Lily was suggesting wasn't a small thing. It was a big thing, a life-changing thing. Lily nodded enthusiastically, her eyes wide and hopeful. "Yes, Mom. I think it might make them feel better. I want to help them because I don't think they should feel like nobody cares. I don't want them to feel invisible anymore." Her mother's heart swelled, a mixture of pride and wonder flooding through her. She looked at her daughter, so small yet so full of purpose. There was something pure in this desire, something that couldn't be ignored. Lily wasn't just thinking about the things in the bags, food, clothes, toiletries. She was thinking about humanity, about dignity, about connection. Lily looked up at her mother, her gaze steady, as if she knew, deep down, that this was the beginning of something much bigger than just a simple act of kindness. "I want them to know that they matter. I want them to know they're not alone." The words hung in the air, a promise, a hope, a wish that Lily was setting into motion with every breath. Her mother felt a quiet shift in the room, a sense that something extraordinary had just been sparked, a tiny flame that would grow into a fire of compassion, a movement of hope. And in that moment, Lily's mom knew that this was not just about filling bags with food and warmth. It was about filling the world with something much more powerful: love. That first night, Lily and her mother worked quietly side by side in the soft glow of the kitchen light, their hands moving almost in rhythm, as if the simple task of packing these bags was a small but sacred ritual. They carefully folded warm socks, nestled granola bars in the corners of the bags, and tucked travel-sized toiletries neatly inside. Each bag was a gift, filled not just with practical items, but with something more intangible: the warmth of someone's heart, a gesture that said, "You matter." Lily worked with purpose, the edges of her small lips curling up as she packed each bag with care and with the quietest of determination. She didn't rush. Every item had its place. Each bag, she decided, needed a special touch. With her crayon, she wrote a note for every one of them. "I hope today is better than yesterday. You are loved." Each note was a tiny message wrapped in kindness, a simple reminder that someone, somewhere, was thinking of them. And on each one, Lily drew hearts to fill the space with a love so deep it couldn't be measured in anything material. Her small hands drew with a confidence that was beyond her years. "If they forgot what love feels like, maybe this will help them remember," she said softly, her voice steady with an understanding that went far beyond her age. Her mother stood at her side, watching as her daughter worked with a heart so full of empathy that it was almost overwhelming. She had never seen Lily so focused, so driven. It was clear this was no longer just a child's idea. It was a calling. She knew she was witnessing the birth of something far bigger than just bags filled with food and socks. When they finished the first 10 bags, Lily's mother stood back, her eyes a little misty as she looked at the small pile of kindness they had created. The bags were a symbol of hope, each one waiting to find its way into the hands of someone who needed it most. Her mother snapped a photo of the bags, smiling through the overwhelming sense of pride that filled her chest. She posted the image on Facebook, thinking it might be something her friends would appreciate. Maybe a few people would join in, donate a few items, volunteer, or simply share the post. It felt like the right thing to do. A small, local effort, born out of the purest desire to help. She never imagined what would happen next. By morning, their porch was no longer empty. It was filled with donations, overflowing with love. Socks, scarves, toothpaste, energy bars, and even winter coats. There were handmade mittens, blankets, and homemade granola. Items that were too many to count, too numerous to ignore. Strangers began to knock on their door, each one carrying something. Sometimes just a few items, sometimes entire bags of goods. Some came with smiles, others with tears in their eyes, moved by the profound simplicity of what Lily was doing. One man, older and weathered by time, stood at their doorstep holding a large bag of food. His eyes glistened as he handed it over, voice trembling as he spoke. "I used to be homeless," he said, swallowing hard. "I know how much this means." Those words hit harder than anything Lily or her mother had expected. They weren't just donations. They were reminders of the human connection that tied them all together, of the power of love to reach into places where people were forgotten. And for every bag that was packed, for every new donation that arrived, Lily's mission seemed to grow. Just a little bit bigger, just a little bit more real. Then the local news got wind of it. A small feature was posted on the station's website, and then the story spread to the local newspaper. It wasn't long before the radio station picked it up, too, broadcasting the simple yet profound story of a little girl who wanted to remind people that they weren't invisible. Lily's project, her love bags, exploded in a way no one had ever expected. It became more than just a one-time act of kindness. It became a movement. People from all walks of life, from all corners of the town, began contributing. Schools organized drives. Local businesses held charity events. The city's churches joined in, offering their space to store supplies, to pack more bags, to distribute them. Volunteers of all ages, from teenagers to retirees, gave their time. Everyone wanted to be part of it. They wanted to feel the warmth of what Lily had started, to be part of something greater than themselves. And for Lily, it was never about the recognition or the attention. It was simply about one thing: ensuring that no one ever had to feel invisible again. What had started as a small idea in the kitchen of a home in Willow Creek had sparked a flame that was now lighting up the entire town. Love, it turned out, was something that spread like wildfire, and it was catching fast. Every bag packed wasn't just filled with socks or food. It was filled with hope. It was filled with the belief that one small act of kindness could change a world. And it had. What had begun as a small act of kindness in a humble living room quickly blossomed into something that could not be contained by the walls of their home. The living room, once a place for family dinners and quiet evenings, was now a makeshift warehouse, overflowing with donations. The scent of cardboard boxes and fresh clothing mingled with the warm fragrance of Lily's mother's cooking, creating a contrast between the normal and the extraordinary. Neighbors, some who had never met Lily before, began to drop off bags of supplies each day. Some brought socks, others toiletries, and some carried boxes filled with non-perishable food, their faces lit with a quiet urgency to contribute. Lily's schoolmates, inspired by her passion, rallied together to form what they called the Kindness Club. They were young, just children, but their hearts were already wide open. They worked tirelessly after school and on weekends, sorting donations and packing bags, each one stamped with the spirit of community. Local businesses soon offered their spaces for sorting and storing the ever-growing mountain of items. A nearby cafe allowed volunteers to use their back room to pack the bags. A hardware store provided the use of their delivery truck to move boxes. And it wasn't just businesses. Strangers stepped forward with time and expertise. A retired Army veteran with weathered hands but a heart still sharp with duty offered his time and his truck to help deliver the love bags across the city. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just wanted to help, as if the simple act of service filled some hole that had long been aching in his own life. But through all the growth and the busy days, one thing remained constant. Lily insisted on being involved every step of the way. She was never too tired, never too busy. The love bags were her creation, her dream, and she wouldn't let it slip away from her hands. She checked each bag personally, carefully inspecting every item as though each one carried a piece of her heart. She made sure that every note was handwritten, every word legible, every drawing, often hearts, flowers, or even little doodles of animals, personal. If they only read it once, Lily said quietly, holding the note in her small hands, they'll know someone saw them. Someone cared. It wasn't just about food, socks, or toiletries. It was about sending a message, one of love, of humanity, of recognition. It was the simplest truth wrapped in a few words: you matter. As the love bag spread, Lily began to meet the people who would forever be etched in her heart. These weren't strangers to her. They weren't just faces in a crowd. They were real people with real stories, each one carrying a burden too heavy to bear alone. There was Marcy, a woman whose eyes held the weariness of someone who had survived far more than anyone should. She had fled an abusive home and was living in her car with her young son. "I didn't know where else to go," Marcy had said, her voice trembling as she took the bag from Lily's hands. "I never thought someone would think of us." Lily had hugged her tightly, as though her small arms could absorb all of Marcy's pain, all her fear. She listened, really listened, as Marcy told her story, never once flinching, never once turning away. Lily didn't just hear the words, she felt them, and she didn't forget. Then there was Darius, a quiet man with a weathered face who spoke little, but whose eyes held a profound sadness. He'd lost his job months ago, and since then, the weight of unemployment had stolen more than just his livelihood. It had stolen his connection to his daughter. "I haven't seen her in 2 years," Darius confessed one afternoon, his voice cracking, his hand shaking. "I don't know how to fix it, but I still love her." Lily reached up and gently placed her hand on his. Her touch was soft, but it spoke volumes. "You will," she said simply, her voice steady, the wisdom of someone much older than her years. "I know you will." And there was Joe, an elderly veteran who, when he spoke, his voice sounded like it had lived through decades of silence. "No one said my name in weeks," he said, his eyes glistening with unspoken sorrow. He had served his country, but in the end, he was left behind, forgotten in the shadows of a world that had moved on without him. Lily didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She asked his name. She remembered it. She looked into his eyes and told him, "You matter, Joe. You are seen." As she spent more time with these individuals, their stories began to shape her view of the world. She didn't just see faces. She saw lives, rich with experience, pain, and hope. She saw people who had been forgotten by society, but never forgotten in her heart. One day, a volunteer, someone who had been working alongside her for weeks, paused and looked at Lily with deep admiration. "You know, Lily," she said, her voice full of awe, "you're not just giving people things. You're giving them dignity." Lily's eyes widened at the word, but she understood it in a way that was almost instinctive. It wasn't just about the bags or the socks or the food. It was about reminding people that they were worthy of care, that they were not invisible, that they were not lesser. In each love bag, Lily was handing back something far more valuable than material items. She was handing back a sense of worth, of respect, of humanity. And with every person she met, with every story she heard, Lily knew this was only the beginning. Her love bags were a beacon, a light that said, "You matter. You are not alone." And as long as she was there would always be someone willing to see them, hear them, and love them. What started as a handful of bags in a living room had grown into a movement that had begun with one little girl's heart and was now touching lives far beyond what anyone had ever imagined. In just 3 months, the impact of Lily's love bags had grown far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Over 2,000 bags, each one packed with warmth, care, and a message that said, "You matter," had found their way into the hands of those who needed them most. But it wasn't just the physical bags that were changing lives. The ripples Lily had created were spreading, touching hearts, shifting the very fabric of the community in ways no one could have predicted. A small bakery, run by a husband and wife who had been quietly struggling to keep their doors open, decided to join the movement. They launched a campaign called Loaf for Love. For every loaf of bread someone purchased, one would be donated to someone experiencing homelessness. It wasn't just a simple exchange. It was a beautiful, symbolic gesture, a loaf for love, a reminder that every act of kindness could nourish both the body and the soul. The warmth of fresh-baked bread began to fill the streets, each donation a small piece of hope that would travel into the hands of someone who needed it most. A local barbershop, its chairs worn with the stories of generations, added its own twist to the movement. They offered free haircuts to anyone who brought in a love bag note. The owner, an elderly man named Thomas, had spent decades cutting hair, but he had never felt quite as alive as he did when he saw the joy on the faces of those who walked in with a love bag. "A haircut doesn't just change how you look," he would say, his hands shaking slightly as he clipped away. "It can change how you feel. It's a reminder that you deserve to be seen." And it wasn't just businesses that were touched. The churches in the area, usually quiet and still during the cold, winter nights, began to open their doors. They offered warmth, food, and shelter to anyone who needed it, especially during the harshest nights. These were no longer just places of worship. They had transformed into sanctuaries of humanity, a place where people were not only sheltered from the cold, but where they were wrapped in the comfort of community. The church bells rang out with a new sense of purpose, each toll a reminder that love, kindness, and action could move mountains. The ripples of Lily's love bags even reached the halls of the city council. Inspired by the young girl's quiet revolution, the council began serious talks about opening a new shelter for the homeless, one that would offer not just a bed, but the services needed to heal the mind and spirit. They discussed funding mental health support, recognizing that homelessness was not just a lack of shelter, but a complex issue that required compassion, understanding, and resources. They looked at Lily's simple, yet profound act of kindness and knew that their city had to do more, had to be better. They wanted to be a city that cared, a city that saw every person not as a statistic, but as a life worth living. Lily, with her bright eyes and unshakable belief that love was the greatest gift she could offer, had ignited a movement that no one saw coming. What started as a simple desire to fill bags with socks and food had snowballed into a cultural shift, one rooted in dignity, respect, and care for others. It wasn't just about the physical items in the bags. It was about what those bags represented, a promise that no one had to face the world alone, that no one had to be invisible. Each act of kindness, whether it was a loaf of bread, a haircut, a warm bed, or a note of encouragement, was a small, glowing ember in the greater fire of love and change. And with every ember, the community began to burn brighter, its spirit more resilient, more united. Lily had planted a seed in the heart of Willow Creek, and that seed had grown into something extraordinary, a collective understanding that kindness was not just something we did, it was something we became. It was a way of being in the world. And with every love bag handed out, every loaf of bread shared, every person given a haircut, and every door opened to a stranger, the world began to look just a little bit brighter. It all started with one little girl's heart, but it had spread into something that had changed not only the lives of the people she touched, but the very soul of her town. The change wasn't just in services, it was in spirit. It was a shift that rippled through the heart of Willow Creek, changing the way people saw each other and themselves. The invisible, those who had long been overlooked and ignored, suddenly became visible in a way they never had before. No longer were they just faces in the crowd or names on a list. They were human beings with stories, with hopes, with struggles, and with the undeniable right to be seen. Where there had once been silence, there was now the hum of conversation. People started talking, not just about the weather or their weekend plans, but about the things that truly mattered, about the struggles of their neighbors, about the deep-seated issues of poverty and homelessness that had been left to simmer in the background for far too long. Conversations that once felt awkward or uncomfortable now felt necessary, like a weight being lifted, a truth finally being spoken aloud. At the grocery store, a mother might strike up a conversation with a woman behind her in line, asking how she was really doing. A group of teenagers, once too absorbed in their own world, might gather together to organize a charity event or volunteer at the shelter. People began to understand that silence, whether out of fear, discomfort, or simple apathy, only perpetuated isolation. Speaking up, reaching out, and acknowledging each other's humanity was the first step in building a town that truly cared. Where there had once been dismissal, there was now action. The invisible became the visible, and it was impossible for anyone to turn a blind eye any longer. Businesses that had once kept their distance started donating food, supplies, and services. People who had felt powerless began to see how small acts of kindness could create ripples of change. It wasn't about grand gestures or one-time donations. It was about the day-to-day acts that built a foundation of compassion. Neighbors who had never exchanged more than a quick wave now organized weekly meetups to pack love bags or to write encouraging letters for the homeless. The local high school formed a community service group, and the mayor began holding town forums, inviting citizens to come together to brainstorm solutions to the ongoing issues of homelessness in their town. The local church set up a new outreach program, while the schools began to educate children about empathy, teaching them how to recognize the needs of those around them and how to act with kindness. The town had learned something vital, that it wasn't enough to simply notice. It wasn't enough to feel sorry or sad about someone else's hardship. It wasn't enough to leave the problem in someone else's hands. Action was the catalyst. Empathy was the fuel. And together, the people of Willow Creek realized that the real change wasn't in the services they provided. It was in the spirit of community, the spirit of togetherness, and a collective will to make their town a place where no one had to feel invisible again. And so, the town transformed. One conversation, one act of kindness, one love bag at a time. It was a transformation of the heart. And that was where the true change had begun. And through it all, Lily kept showing up. Not for recognition, not for applause, because she saw something most adults didn't, the humanity in everyone, regardless of circumstance. One day, Lily received a letter in the mail. It had no return address. Inside was a photo of a man standing in front of a small apartment building, holding a set of keys. The note read, "Dear Lily, my name is Carlos, and I wanted to share something with you that words can hardly capture, but I'll try my best. I can't remember the last time I wrote a letter, but I had to write to you to let you know how much you changed my life. A few months ago, I was living on the streets of Willow Creek. I hadn't seen my family in years. I made choices I'm not proud of, choices that led me to a place where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. My days blurred together, cold mornings, sleepless nights, empty stomachs. I walked around like a ghost, invisible to the world around me. Sometimes, I thought that maybe I was invisible, that no one cared if I lived or died. I was just one more forgotten soul in a city full of people. I never asked for help. I didn't think I deserved it. I wasn't sure I even knew how to receive it anymore. Then one cold evening, I sat on a bench near Main Street, trying to keep warm under a threadbare jacket. I didn't have much, just the sign I held out, hoping someone might spare some change or a kind word. Most people just passed by, like they didn't see me at all. That's when a woman came by with a little girl. You stopped right in front of me, and I felt something shift in my chest. You didn't look away. You didn't offer just a coin or a glance. You looked at me, through me, and when you handed me that bag, my heart nearly stopped. There was something so different about it. It wasn't just the food or the socks or the toothbrush. It was the note you wrote. I hope today is better than yesterday. You are loved. Lily, those words broke me. I didn't cry when I first read it, but I wanted to. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had cared enough to think of me. The note didn't just remind me that I was a person. It reminded me that I was still worthy of love, that I hadn't been completely forgotten. That night, I sat under a streetlight and read that note over and over again. I didn't know it then, but it was the start of something. That small act of kindness, the smallest thing I could have never imagined, was the spark I needed to change. I couldn't keep going the way I had been. I had to make a choice. I got help. I went to the shelter the next day. I got clean. I found a job. And for the first time in years, I found the courage to reach out to my family. I have a place to stay now. A small apartment, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. None of this would have happened without you, Lily. Your love bag didn't just help me get through a day or a week. It helped me believe that maybe, just maybe, I was worth more than the mistakes I'd made. You helped me remember what it felt like to be seen. I wanted you to know that because I don't think I could ever thank you enough for showing me that kindness still exists in the world. You reminded me that no matter how dark it gets, there's always light, always a reason to keep fighting. You gave me that hope when I had none. Thank you, Lily, for seeing me when no one else did, for showing me that it's never too late to change. You are loved. Carlos. Lily held the letter to her chest. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, "We really can fix something one heart at a time." A legacy of love. Lily's love bags didn't end that year. In fact, they became a town tradition. Every winter, families gathered to pack bags, write notes, and walk the same downtown streets Lily once did. She's older now, but the mission remains the same, to remind people they are seen. They are valued. They are loved. And Willow Creek, it's no longer just a town. It's a community stitched together by kindness. All because one little girl asked, "Why doesn't someone help?" and then decided, "I will." Lily's small hands packed hope into every bag, but it was her heart that carried the true gift, the power to see what others overlooked and to act when others walked by. What began with a simple question and a few Ziploc bags became a wave of compassion that swept through an entire town, proving that no one is too small to make a massive difference. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for someone else. She chose to care, and the world around her followed. Now it's your turn. Look around you. Someone, somewhere, is waiting for a sign that they still matter. Be that sign. Be that light. Don't just be inspired. Be involved. Start small. Start now. Start with love. Like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, go out and be the reason someone believes in kindness again.